What's going on, everybody? We're back. It's the Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 23 on this Monday, October 2nd, 2023. Josh Callaway, Tom Green, James D. Jackson, Sooners Illustrated and 24/7 Sports. Gentlemen, Oklahoma's 5-0. It is Texas week. Exciting times in the state of Oklahoma. How are we feeling? We're almost to the midway point of the season already, which is kind of unbelievable. Bye week next week. Do we have enough in the tank to push through Texas week? You gotta, whatever's left, you gotta summon it up for this. This is the biggest week of the year.
Yeah, I'm working on it, man. I'm struggling after that, late night the other night. Got home at like 2:30 in the morning, barely slept, but we're gonna power through this week and get down to Dallas for Red River, man.
I'm actually feeling much better. I was going through a little, sickness all of last week. I'm pretty sure most of you heard my voice on the podcast last week. Wasn't great, but we're back, man. I'm actually pumped right now. This is the time of the year. Like this OU Texas, so it's ready. I got a whiteboard ready. I was gonna pull the whiteboard out for this one, but for the superstitious folk, I kept it on the side. Just see how we get through this week, and we'll get there.
Absolutely. Are you going to whiteboard drop some plays for us, or
no? The podcast count. Remember we talked about this? Yeah, so we were doing on the fingers still.
We we talked about this, all summer, all fall camp. I mean, this is what everybody was eyeing toward. Everybody looked at the schedules and thought Oklahoma should definitely be 5-0 when the Texas game came around. If Texas can find a way to pull off the win in Alabama, they should be 5-0. They did. Both teams have held their end of the bargain. First time since 2011 that both teams will be undefeated going into the Red River game, which is kind of amazing. That's obviously been Texas not holding up their end of the bargain more often than the other way.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a lot.
I think I read earlier it's the first time since 2009 that both teams are at least 5-0 going into this game. So
something like that. Yeah. It's also, it's an extra little wrinkle to it in that the way the calendar fell, it's always the first Saturday in October, but obviously Oklahoma played 5 September games this year, which is higher than normal. Got that game snuck in right there on September 30th. So kind of there's a lot of little extra wrinkles to it. It's going to be a madhouse. ESPN College Game Day is going to be down there. Josh Pate's taking his crew down there. It's going to be –
We're going to be there.
We're going to be there, the biggest of them all. It's going to be insane. It's going to be – it's always insane, but it's going to be extra insane. But we'll get there. We'll talk about the Texas game just a little bit on the tail end of this show. And, of course, Thursday's show will be the full breakdown and game preview for the Sooners and the Longhorns. But, of course, you know by now, Mondays are game breakdown and reaction shows. And Oklahoma played Iowa State over the weekend. We were all there in Norman, night game, 50-20. The Sooners beat the Cyclones. Kind of a weird game. Oklahoma ended up dominating as expected, but not in the way that we all thought Oklahoma would cover the spread, but we didn't have it being like this. The offense went nuts, completely lit up what has been a pretty good Iowa State defense, a defense that, as Brent Venables said in his postgame, has been kind of one of the gold standard programs for defense in the conference the last several years under Matt Campbell. Defensively, it was a little rocky for a while, but they settled down, dominated the second half. Guys, obviously, we'll get into the weeds of all the little nuts and bolts, anything that stuck out. But just in general, did you come out of Saturday more confident, less confident, the same? Where's kind of your temperature check on Oklahoma after what we saw on Saturday?
I think a little bit more confident. Look, I don't think any of us expected Oklahoma's defense to kind of look as shaky as it did early on there. They had a couple of busts, looked like a couple of guys just trying to, go for an interception instead of, hitting the receiver and trying to break up a play. And it resulted in a couple of long touchdowns for Iowa State. But they answered. They responded resoundingly. The defense played lights out for the final 40 minutes of this game. The offense was rolling. I think all things considered, if you take out basically 3 plays by Iowa State, this was probably the best all-around game we saw from Oklahoma this season. Of course, context matters. You need to include those busts because those were, some big plays that they let up. But all things considered, just the way they were able to respond, I think Jaden Gibson said it best after the game. This team gets punched in the mouth and punches right back, something that last year's team probably didn't do. So we're seeing growth from them, more importantly. So I think it was good for them to get tested kind of in the way that they did right before Texas. But I left that game pretty impressed with what I saw, overall in the totality.
Yeah, definitely. I feel more confident as well after seeing this one. I think it was the all-around best performance. I mean, given the opponent, because Arkansas State, obviously, that was a great outing by both sides. But given the opponent and how good Iowa State is offensively and defensively, I think OU did a really, really good job. And like I told Josh on Saturday, I mean, that my score prediction is going to be a lot different now after against Texas when we come up and make those predictions. Now that I saw OU do that, against that's the best defense they played. 50 points. I mean, that's incredible. And there was a couple of drives where we thought they should have got in the end zone. So, I mean, I feel much better.
Yeah, I mean, would you have rather, if you're Oklahoma, just shut out Iowa State and dominated the game? I'm sure. But there is something to be said for, like you guys are saying, it was bad for about 15, 20 minutes of game time or so. Iowa State getting these big, long plays. Because, coming into the game, I talked about it on Thursday, the Cyclones just didn't have any weapons on paper that would scare me if I was Oklahoma. They couldn't run the ball at all. One of the worst rushing teams in the country.
Well, they had Jalen Noel. He's pretty good. Wide receiver.
I get whatever. Okay, whatever. Iowa State, they're not a good offensive team. They're not. Rocco Beck's his freshman quarterback's been off to a nice start, but he's a freshman. He hadn't really played in an environment ever like that before. Like I said, their rushing offense was really bad, coming in, literally one of the bottom 10 rushing teams in the country coming in. And the first few drives, they're running the ball. Beck's getting big passes down the field. They're scoring points. And you're kind of – everybody in that stadium is wondering what is happening right now. And it wasn't pretty. I'm not saying that was good, but the fact that over the final 39 minutes, like Brent Venables noted, they shut them out. 82 total yards in the second half. They found their footing. I'm willing to kind of write off that stretch as kind of just a couple of busts, a couple of, maybe not being totally ready for what they were seeing, whatever. They made the adjustments and they fixed it, which you feel like Oklahoma even a year ago wouldn't have been able to do. Whether that's from a confidence standpoint, but even the coaching staff standpoint. Brent Venables, that second year as a head coach, being able to kind of assess and make adjustments and fix things, because it was really like a switch flipped in the second half of that game. And it was completely dominant defensively. Iowa State couldn't move the ball in the second half of this game, which is what we thought we'd see the whole time. So again, would you rather just dominate the whole way? I'm sure. But the fact that they could, settle down, not panic, fix it is really encouraging, I think, moving forward. I think that you can gain more confidence almost from that than if they had just dominated again in some ways.
If you watch it, it wasn't necessarily like defensive schematically, bust. Like it wasn't just guys not knowing where they should be, and that's how the busts happened. It was guys going after the big play. So like, Key Lawrence going after the interception on the first one. I mean, if he just plays the man, he might even get a really big hit to knock the ball loose if he just stays on the wide receiver, on Jalen Noel. And then in the other one, it was the exact same thing. It was guys going after the interception. They were just really hyping, feeling really well, especially after the first one from Billy Bowman, where he got his interception in return. And so I think that was the positive of it, because it wasn't really too hard to fix. I asked Venables about this afterwards. It was just kind of guys like settling in and just making sure you're playing your responsibility, taking the right angles and things like that. So that's what the difference was in that second half.
Yeah, and I tweeted this after the game, but in those first, basically 20 minutes of the game, Iowa State was averaging 8.5 yards per play and had like 260 yards of total offense, and that's when they cut the Oklahoma's lead to 21-20.
Mm-hmm.
After that, Iowa State had fewer than 90 yards of offense, averaged fewer than 3 yards per play, and Oklahoma just absolutely dominated that game from there on out. Yeah, the defense, like you said, gave up those few big plays that resulted in scores. But then when you factor in the pick six that Billy Bowman had on the first minute of the game, third snap, the defense kind of came out, net only giving up, 13 points on the day. That's still pretty good. Giving up 20, scoring 6 of their own. So yes, you need to clean up those breakdowns, but like James said, it's not like ones where it was just like poor coverage and like just like complete breakdowns. It was guys trying to make the big play instead of the safe play. And sometimes you take those gambles and sometimes they don't pay off. But overall, like, it's hard not to be impressed with what that defense did, especially after it kind of got punched in the mouth there.
100%. And defense continues to create turnovers. You mentioned Billy Bowman. Gentry Williams got another interception in this game as well. Mm-hmm. Creating negative plays. I want to say, I got the official stat book here, 9 tackles for loss, got a sack in this game. They're doing good things, and so while that stretch was, a little alarming,
you say a sack? We got 3
they
sacks.
fixed it. What's that?
We got 2 sacks on there. I thought it was 1 at the very end.
Official stats 1.
Official stats 1.
Oh, see, Tom, I was hyped. I was hyped. My prediction was right, and they didn't cover it.
PJ and Ethan Downs half sack each. That's what the official stat.
I thought Severe got one. I guess they didn't call it that. He must have got a head of the line of scrimmage. That's unfortunate.
The way the things are ruled all the time. I had the Cincinnati game, same thing. Deshaun McCullough got up and knocked a pass loose. And I was like, pass breakup for Deshaun McCullough. I went back and looked later. He didn't have one. And it was like, I know he broke up a pass.
Right.
So things get wonky sometimes. But official stat book 1. Either way, 9 tackles for loss. Like I said, a couple interceptions. Gentry Williams continues to be really good. This was the first game this year where I didn't feel like Danny Stutzman was all over the place. Like it was kind of got toward the end of the game. I was like, I haven't felt like Danny Stutzman's been just everywhere like he's been. Still led the team in tackles. Again, kind of shows where the bar is for him right now that he, he just only had 6 tackles and still led the team. But he's been so good the first several games. Defensively, though, overall, I mean, guys, for you that stood out, any other takeaways, from what you saw defensively? Like I said, Gentry Williams continues to be really good. He had a tackle for loss in this game. Just overall, it continues to be pretty sound. I mean, obviously, you had those couple of ugly drives, kind of like Tulsa, but you figured it out and you buttoned it up and you dominated after that.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Gentry Williams. I think he was targeted 5 times, gave up 2 receptions, but only 8 yards, had a tackle for loss, had what will probably be the easiest interception of his career. That ball was just thrown right to him. Like he was a wide open receiver there, just playing catch with Rocco Becht. But yeah, the defense continue to get those interceptions. They're tied with Liberty now for most interceptions in the country with 10.
Wild.
I think it's the first time in like 20-something years that Oklahoma's had 10 interceptions through the first 5 games. So they're doing a really good job of creating these takeaways. They're +8 on the season, got a couple of fumbles early in the year too. So they're doing a good job of creating turnovers, and also offense doing a pretty good job of taking care of the ball themselves. And obviously, anytime you're going to end up +1 or +2 in turnover margin, it's going to give you a better chance to win the games. But I've been impressed with what I've seen from those guys in the secondary to be able to make those plays. Jordan Kelly was really impressive in this one. I think he was the highest rated player on the team. He only played like 20 snaps on the interior of the line, but did a good job disrupting. And PJ Adebaware, he played more snaps than anybody else at defensive end in this game. It was 25 snaps, a little bit more than
he's coming along.
Yeah. You can see his development each week. He went from playing like 10, 11 snaps those first 2 weeks to he's in the low 20s, now the mid 20s. And he got his first sack, in there in Big 12 play. And that's, I think, back-to-back games now with a sack for him. So really, really good to see, a 5-star talent kind of coming into his own and getting comfortable. Because, we talked about it before the season. He's obviously a little bit more of a late bloomer when it was with his recruitment. He's a guy that's just got like the raw talent, but needed to be developed. So I think it's a really promising sign for Oklahoma that he's coming along as quickly as he has, because the talent is very evident there.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about Gentry Williams here for a little bit. I mean, just what he's been so far this season, we got to see a lot of action out of him, because it seems like teams are just not going Woody Washington's way. That's the way it's going to be. But Gentry Williams has held up his own as well. And so I think a lot of fans, when you watch this defense, they can kind of say, I mean, the cornerbacks are really, really good for this team. I mean, I was reading through our board during the game, and they were like, we need to play more man. I mean, it's not something you would have heard over the last couple of years. Guys, I mean, fans wanting these guys to play man and not being the soft zone coverage that teams have been eating, Oklahoma up with last couple of years. Now they're fairly confident, and it's just like you got Gentry Williams and Woody Washington and guys all the way around, and we already talked about how good this safety group is when they're all, clicking at a high margin. So, I mean, overall, the secondary has been outstanding as well for OU, and that's been a strength for them, and that's why they've kept teams out of the end zone, because as we talked about, the bend don't break. They get kind of in the red zone, and those secondary guys kind of step up and keep guys out of there. I mean, you go to man there and you get it done. And that's what's working so far for OU on the defensive side, I think, and that'll play a big factor in how they handle Texas next week, this week, because of how good they have, the receivers they have, like, Worthy, guys like that were really good against OU last year. Now it seems like OU has, guys for them, and that's going to be a big difference.
Yeah, you want to talk about those cornerbacks? You talk about Gentry Williams. I just looked it up. he's been targeted 19 times this season, allowed 12 catches. So, they're completing 63% of their passes against him, but he's only given up 55 receiving yards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like 4 yards per catch right there.
Yeah.
Woody Washington's been targeted 17 times in 5 games. He's only given up 9 catches. The teams are completing 53% of those passes against him. So those guys have, played really well. Obviously need to keep them both healthy. Like Brent Venables said, before the season, early in the season, cornerback's a position where they don't have a lot of experience and they've had some guys kind of banged up. So they need to keep those guys fresh because, they've been playing very well and kind of living up to, what we kind of expected from Woody Washington and Gentry Williams coming into this season.
Yeah, we talked about the cornerback room, and it was, Woody Washington's clearly number one, and the group on paper had talent, but it was kind of like, okay, a lot of unproven guys. Who's going to rise to the occasion? And then we all thought Gentry Williams was the most likely option. And, yeah, he's living up to that. I mean, I said it on Saturday, that's a guy who's going to play on Sundays. I mean, the way he's playing right now, he looks like a next-level player. And, they didn't have Kenai Walker in this game, and they still played well, had to lean on Kendall Dolby a little more. Josiah Wagner got in there for probably the most action he's really seen. I don't know, Tom, you do the snap counts. I haven't got a chance to look at it, but it seemed like Wagner was out there more than we've seen before. Do you happen to know that off the top of your head?
Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head, but he did play a little bit more. I know he was dealing with a little bit of injury earlier in the year. Jacoby Johnson's a guy, I think he played like probably close to 20 snaps at the corner. Kendall Dolby, you mentioned, but they've been using him at Cheetah as well, with Justin Harrington out for the year. So they've been moving some guys around a little bit. But I think this week, even more so, I mean, I know Brent Venables made a big, deal about it last week against Cincinnati that they played 30 guys in a close game. They played more in this one because it was a blowout, so they were able to get some guys in there late in the fourth quarter. But it felt to me like they did a better job of rotating guys defensively. I think part of it is that, they didn't have as many guys like Danny Stutzman and Woody Washington playing like 70 snaps. Part of that is because Iowa State only ran like 60-something plays. But it just felt like there was a little bit – it wasn't so much top-heavy. They were able to keep some guys fresher, and maybe that's because, the game turned out the way it did. Oklahoma won by 30. Maybe some of it is, hey, Texas is next week. Let's not strain these guys too much and try to keep them fresh heading into that game. But it just felt to me like they did a better job of kind of rotating some guys throughout that defense against Iowa State.
Yeah, because you got to see some of the backups getting there. Kind of after Danny Stutzman had his little stinger or whatever it was, on his shoulder.
Stub toe.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever it was.
You
got to see the backups come in and kind of keep Iowa State out of the end zone. Now, Iowa State obviously had their backup quarterback in, but they kind of got it down the field a little bit, and the defense held up for what it's worth. Even though Iowa State used all of their timeouts, used everything they could to try to give their offense a chance to score again, the backups held their own, and it's a good sight to see.
Other defensive things, kind of as we wrap up defense, get over what the offense did. Reggie Pearson was back. I thought he played pretty well. Good to see him back in the fold. And Peyton Bowen continues to be really good, too. 4 more tackles for him. Blocked another punt. That's already 2 blocked punts for him in 5 games. I tried my best to look up, like, all-time punt block. Surprisingly hard. You think that would be an easier list?
No, Tom's got it. Tom's got it.
Brandon Shelby holds the career record with 4.
Well, Peyton Bowen's well on his way. He's on pace.
He had 2 as a sophomore. 2 as a sophomore in 2002. 2 as a senior in 2004. I don't know if like someone had 3 in a season and like that's it. But I mean, Peyton Bowen's off to a pretty good start.
I was trying to find the OU specific because I was like, he might be the all-time leader now with 2. It's hard to block punts. He's got 2 in 5 games. So Peyton Bowen continues to be really good. How sick do you think Trace Ford is about recovering the ball at like the 5 and somehow fumbling it out the back of the end zone? That's hard to do. Thankfully, Oklahoma won the game big. And
we actually asked him.
Trace Ford should have 2 non-offensive touchdowns this season. He got tackled by a quarterback on a interception against.
Yeah, that's right.
Had a gimme here, on the blocked punt and just couldn't come up with either. Man, he's got to feel sick.
Yeah, we asked him. He said, 3rd time's going to be the charm for me. I'm going to get it done the 3rd time. That's what he said to us after we asked him.
Yeah, thankfully they won the game soundly. If this was like a close loss, that wouldn't be as funny. That wouldn't be a lighthearted thing.
But actually, like when you look at it, like what Tom was telling me when it happened, it was like that actually might be better because the defense gets a rest and you get the 2 extra points if you can score a touchdown. So I mean,
It did
kind
not.
of worked out. If it didn't happen that way, but it kind of would have worked out.
I mean, they settled for a field goal on that next drive, but like the way I looked at it when it happened is because that was at the point of the game where the defense was giving up those big plays and kind of struggling, and if you recover that for a touchdown, defense gets right back on the field. Is that like what you want right there in that moment? I'm just like, okay, you get the safety. Your offense has been rolling. You got to feel pretty good about your chances to get more points off that safety. Get your defense off the field for a few minutes. Get them a little breather, kind of recuperate. But hey, if they scored a touchdown, it would look great. But I mean, it all worked out for them in the end.
That's the analytical answer I wanted from Trace when we asked him, but we didn't get that. That would have been better.
My favorite part was just I tweeted the clip yesterday, but as soon as he loses it out the back, Peyton Bowen and Nick Anderson are both standing right there in unison.
Yeah.
Hands on head. They did like a surrender cobra type of thing almost. It was just, like I said, they won by 30, so we can laugh about it now. Trace Ford had a great spirit about it afterward and everything. But yeah, funny play there. Is he just, again, so to touch the ball in before the goal line and then lose it out the back is really, really hard to do. But fun play there. Peyton Bowen, 2 punt blocks, right? That's nuts. Any other defensive standouts from this game you guys wanted to touch on before we shift over to what the offense did? I think we covered pretty much everything.
We saw Jaren Kanak out there, and he looked pretty good.
Good to see him back. Yeah,
good to see him in there and doing a good job. He had 3 tackles. Is that what it was? Yeah, 3 total tackles. So yeah, pretty good outing for him after what we thought was a scary injury. I mean, it sounded pretty bad the way it was described.
A pulmonary contusion just sounds absolutely miserable.
Yeah,
I know contusion is just a bruise.
It's bruise, but
like a lung, like a bruised lung, and you're coughing up blood. That sounds a lot worse than apparently it was because he was back there in the starting lineup. So good to see that it wasn't serious for him, even though he had to get taken to the hospital in that Cincinnati game. But I'm sure they were happy to have him back.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we touched on it already, but the Billy Bowman pick 6 was sick. That was his return man hat got flipped on real quick. He shifted from cornerback to return man very fast. That was a great play. And what a way to start that game. And it is funny, too, to kind of wrap up that turnovers thing. I don't need to remind Oklahoma fans, but a couple of years ago, this team could not force turnovers to save their life, which was funny because that was the whole thing of Alex Grinch's defense was to cause a lot of turnovers. That was kind of one of his calling cards. And they just flat couldn't force turnovers. They're one of the worst teams in the country year in, year out in forcing turnovers. And now this year, like Tom said, they're an interception machine. I mean, they're just racking them up right now. And those quick turnarounds, obviously defensive touchdowns are obviously huge, but just those quick, sudden momentum-changing plays that could be big in games like this weekend. So we'll have something to keep an eye on going into Saturday. Offensively, obviously, they lit it up. And we talked about it on Thursday. The offense in the real game, I put it in quotes, the good teams that they played this year, again, in quotes, Cincinnati and SMU, the offense didn't play very well. And they didn't score a lot of points. They still didn't really run the ball that well on Saturday, but it didn't matter again because they threw it all over the place. Obviously, you guys know, we talked about it last Thursday. I've been, I don't know if critical is the right word of Dylan Gabriel, but I've offered my assessment.
You can say you're a hater.
You've been
definitely
pretty
not.
rough on him.
My assessment, that's fake news. My assessment, I thought he was really good on Saturday. This was the best game he played, certainly this year, maybe period, since coming to Oklahoma. He was really sharp. The deep balls to Nick Anderson, that was a dot. The throw to Brent Thompson was a little underthrown, but it kind of worked out. Brent Thompson really fast.
Yeah, it's hard to hit Thompson in stride.
Yeah, Jalil Farouk the bomb. Jaden Gibson, that was a nice throw, and he broke like 50 tackles to get into the end zone. Dylan Gabriel was really sharp in this game. That's a DG that if he plays like that, and that's, like I said, I think maybe the best game he's played at OU, so it's hard to ask that every week, but if he plays like that, Oklahoma can really hang with just pretty close to anybody. And if he plays like that this weekend, they very well may win.
The good thing from that, what you see, like we talked about it a little bit after on Saturday, the attitude that he kind of came in with, the fireworks that he had, that is something that we're going to see against him.
He was spicy. Yeah, he was talking trash. Yeah.
I mean, we talked to a couple guys in the locker room after that. Even Brendan Thompson was the guy that told us, like, yeah, he's looking to really, prove himself in these 3, like the 3 previous games. The Cincinnati game, which he struggled against Cincinnati throughout his career, and then had the Iowa State. He was pretty upset. I mean, didn't get to really play against them or Texas, And so you're going to see a fiery Dylan Gabriel. He's really looking to prove himself in the next couple of games, and that's going to work well for OU, I think. I mean, we talk about this run game, and it's like I said, I think Dylan Gabriel was played well enough this season to be, a really high caliber quarterback. One of those type of guys you can really trust in big games. It's just that OU hasn't had the best run game to support it. And so he has to try to make every single play. Like the entire offense is just Dylan Gabriel trying to make it happen because the run game wasn't there. And now we kind of see him using his legs a little bit more. And that's helped out a little bit, I think, because it looked like Marcus Major going against that 3-man front. He kind of got going a little bit better than he's been over the course of the season. That was a better outing for him. But still, as you said, it was just 3.8 yards a carry for the rushing offense. I mean, that's fairly decent, but still not where OU wants it to be at. So I think Dylan Gabriel using his legs and not being afraid of even running over guys now. I mean, my goodness, that'll help out as they move forward with the fiery passion that he's bringing over the next couple of games.
Yeah, and we've kind of talked about this, and others have mentioned it too, but kind of a Dylan Gabriel revenge tour this season. I mean, going into Tulsa, he never beaten them when he was at UCF. Cincinnati, don't think he'd beaten them either. Iowa State didn't play great against them last year. Missed the Texas game because of injury. And then, hey, come back out of the bye week. Who does he have?
Yeah.
His former school. So it's just kind of like the way the schedule lines up for Dylan Gabriel this year. Like, it's easy to see why Brendan Thompson said after the game that, hey, he's kind of taking every game personal this year, but especially kind of this like 5-6 game stretch here in the middle of the season. But he has lived up to kind of the expectations. Another game over 300 yards, completed 67% of his passes, 366 yards, 5 total touchdowns. James talked about his ability to kind of supplement the run game that has struggled at times, but he's made some good plays there, and feels like they've had some more designed runs, some more option type plays for him that he's kind of taken advantage of. But again, like his deep balls. I mean, Josh mentioned kind of those dimes that he was dropping to some of those guys, but coming into this game, Cincinnati's secondary had only given up like 3 plays of 30 or more yards this season. Oklahoma had 4 of those in this game alone. I mean,
the top 25 passing defense coming in, and we talked about that on Thursday. Now, they hadn't played a murderer's row of offenses by any means, Oklahoma State, Iowa, but still, I mean, they kind of dominated their first 4 games. And Gabriel in this offense, they torched him up pretty good. And this receiving core, continues to be so good. Emmett Jones, we talked about on Thursday. I think we can kind of take a collective pat on the back, because on Thursday I brought up the question, eventually Angelo Anthony won't have a big game. He didn't. This is the first time Iowa State kept him off the board. He only had 1 catch in this game for 16 yards. But we said, but we said, who would be the most likely? Tom and I both said Farouk. He was a leading receiver. James, you brought up Nick Anderson. He caught a bomb touchdown in this game again. That's 5 tutties for him already on 10 catches. He's a touchdown machine. I think that's extremely encouraging. That Angelo Anthony the first time was taken away, and it didn't matter. They still threw it all over the place. This receiver core is deep.
And Nick Anderson might have had 2. I think he broke away free and it was right when Gabriel got off of his read and went to somebody else, and when it happened. So I mean, that was unfortunate, but yeah, Nick Anderson could have had 2 in that one. I mean, the wide receiver group has been really good. I think at this point in the season, Oklahoma can tout that as their strength. They can just, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you can say, I think our receivers can hang with just about any defense out there, and that's what it is. But it's like we said, it's the run game that's gonna be the big factor. You have to be able to run the ball in tough games. That's how Texas beat Alabama, was being able to run the ball. I mean, you got guys like Jonathan Brooks, who's their running back, who's just had a great last couple of games. That's going to really put the hammer on OU. How are they going to handle that run game and things like that? I mean, that's a guy that OU had recruited just for a little bit. Didn't give him an official offer, but he was on their radar, and they were talking to him and things like that. But a guy like that, that's who OU has to be able to stop. They don't have that on their side, I don't think either. Running this ball, Marcus Major hasn't had that type of production just yet, and I think at this point, Josh, I think he's the guy going forward out, because I know we talked to Coach Venables, and it was he was saying Jonathan Barnes is not. Javonte Barnes is not all the way there. He's not all the way healthy. So I think Marcus Major is the guy we're going to see. We got to see a little bit more of Gavin Sawchuk, which is good in this game, but I don't think he's the guy that they're going to go with at this point in the season. It looks like it's going to be Marcus Major going forward.
Yeah, the receivers have just been continually impressive. And I know it's funny because we kind of talked about that being the big question mark of this team coming into the season, but those guys have delivered. Andre Anthony, it just seems like you could set your clock to him getting the first target of the game. This one came on a flea flicker of sorts, but only 16 yards, but still. But after that, I mean, he was only targeted one other time. Jalil Farouk, like you mentioned, led the team, 81 receiving yards. Nick Anderson, 5 touchdowns, on 10 catches now on the year. I think the post-game notes said that the quickest wide receiver to 5 touchdowns in a season before Nick Anderson was his brother, who did it on like 17 catches.
17, yeah.
Yeah. And then getting Brennan Thompson back. I mean, that's huge. And the timing's great. Like, as if you needed another storyline going into Texas week. But hey, the former Texas receiver is back after battling an ankle injury for the first month of the season. And what does he do on like his first or second snap of the season? Hauls in a 54-yard bomb, the longest play from scrimmage for Oklahoma in that game. A little bit underthrown by Dylan Gabriel. He said he should have recognized him, just a beat earlier, but a great job by Brennan Thompson to come back and make a play in double coverage to catch that and, put them in good field position, even though they missed a field goal at the end of that drive. But just like having another player like him with just unreal speed. Right? He's a guy that ran like a 10-2 in the 100.
Yeah.
I mean, he says he's hands down the fastest guy on this team.
Mm-hmm.
I might believe him. You do have some really fast guys throughout there. And Dylan Gabriel even said, hey, he might be the fastest guy that I've played with, and he's played with some fast skill players too. But just adding another weapon to that offense, going into the biggest game of the season is huge. And again, the timing is great, but I just continue to be impressed with what this receiving group has been able to do. And we haven't even talked about Drake Stoops. I mean, he hasn't put up huge numbers, but he's been like their most reliable receiver this year. He's catching like 80-something% of his targets, which is tops on the team. So he's been a good safety valve when those like big playmakers haven't, been there.
On the drive that Drake Stoops got his touchdown, he was kind of like the guy that was making it all happen, because he forced a holding call, a pass interference, one of those type of things. Like, it was him just giving that defense fits before he got his touchdown. And so, like you said, he's been reliable. He's been the guy that you look to when the other guys aren't going, and that's what happened on that drive there. I liked what I saw out of him. And you talked about Brennan Thompson. I mean, Dylan Gabriel threw that ball. It looked severely underthrown.
Threw that ball 60 yards in the air
just because how fast Brennan looked. I mean, and I think you were the one that saw it first. Like, you had your binoculars out in the press box. You was like, hey, I think that's Brennan Thompson out there. And I said, okay. And I looked at it, and right then he got the pass. So that was a pretty cool sequence that we saw up there.
Yeah, like I said, Dylan said he should have released that ball just a touch earlier, but he threw that ball from the 20 to the 20.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is a long way to throw the ball, regardless of who your receiver is.
Mm-hmm.
But again, just a great job by Brennan Thompson to come back and catch that.
And that's right there. That's why it's, naturally, when you look at this, because I don't think enough people know about it, you want to underthrow it rather than overthrow it, because it gives your receiver make a play. Yeah. So that's, I mean, you're going to see that a lot of times. But just looking at that play, it was pretty big.
Yeah, Brennan Thompson too. Remember, he battled had his tonsils removed right at the end of summer too. I mean, that's kind of a no joke thing as an adult to have that happen. So that set him back a little bit. It seems like he's just kind of catching up, and he's still a young player. He's going to be around for a while. And to add him into the mix before the Texas game, like Tom noted, is just another weapon over this offense as they continue to get it going. Starner caught a pass in this game. Clearly, we're almost midway through. It's just the tight ends are just not going to be a big part of the passing offense, and that's okay. If you're going to do what they've been doing, it's fine. So Starner caught a pass in this game.
It almost feels like Drake Stoops is like, a lot of people talk about tight end is like the quarterback's best friend because of the safety valve. Yeah. It's almost like Drake Stoops has been, kind of playing that role because he is kind of that trusted guy that, hey, we need a catch to, move the chains, get, 5 to 10 yards. Like, he's going to be that possession receiver in the middle of the field that you would typically kind of want your tight end to be. But yeah, the tight ends just continue to not really be involved in the passing game. One other note on the receivers I wanted to mention, because I know we had a lot of people on the boards saying, hey, I would love to see Jalil Farouk in the slot with, Andrell Anthony and Nick Anderson split out wide. Jalil Farouk played 20 snaps in the slot this game, which was more than he played in the first 4 games combined. So another little wrinkle to keep your eye on there, just in terms of the receiving core and kind of how they use all those vast explosive weapons that they have there.
Well, they certainly have a lot of flexibility and weapons. It's really amazing what Emmett Jones has kind of done with this group. And these Jaden Gibson, too. I mean, we touched on it, but him to pull that ball down and then just break all – I mean, of the top, 10 plays of this season, he's got like 5 of them. Jaden Gibson has been a highlight machine this season. And
if you want to get hype before OU Texas, go listen to what Jaden Gibson said to the press. I mean, he talked everything about like it shows you that they understand how big this is. He talked about getting punched in the mouth and coming back from that in this game, and then talking about how they tried to take their pride away last year with that 49-0 win, and they're going to get it back. And that's kind of the notion that he was getting to. He said everybody in the locker room knows what time it is. I mean, if you want to get pumped about it, get some goosebumps, go listen to what he said there. Pretty good stuff from him.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple of the other guys on the beat after the game. I was like, man, like Jaden Gibson and Walter Rouse are just like going head to head for like the good guy media award this year. Like Walter Rouse might be the most interesting man on this team, but Jaden Gibson, like if football doesn't work out for him, he should just be a motivational speaker. Because that guy can get you hyped. He just had like the perspective that he provides as a guy who's just in his second year has been really impressive. Just like listening to him, getting a chance to talk to him.
Yeah, I think Jaden Gibson get my vote right now. So we got a ways to go. So we have a little over half the season, but yeah, he's been great.
We got Key Lawrence up there as well,
for sure.
That's just because he complimented your waves.
No, well, yes, that
bias.
plays a factor in it, but he's been great with us. I mean, he's been good every time we talk to him. So
clear bias. The running game, Marcus Major is clearly the guy. At least as of now, they tried to get Sawchuk in there. Tolly Walker didn't really had a few carries, and then like you said, James Javonte Barnes didn't get any carries again. I know that was too bad. That was a big play that got called back on the hold. Yeah, I don't know. I guess Oklahoma's just not that good of a running team, which is kind of insane because we talk about that as being a major strength in the preseason. Because I don't think, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm, some, film guru by any means. But I think it's more on the running backs than the line. I think the offensive line is doing okay. I don't know. The run game is just kind of is what it is. We're almost halfway through the season now. Marcus Major's a solid running back. Javonte Barnes is banged up. I still think he's the most talented running back on the team, but if he's not 100%, I just got to take Oklahoma's word for that. And I like to see them continue to don't abandon Sawchuk. He only had 7 carries in this game. I like to see Gavin get a chance to really get going. Get a rhythm and get going a bit because they're gonna, I don't know. We keep saying it. They're gonna need to run the ball eventually.
That's the most he's got this season, right? Was it 7? Is that the most?
He had 9 in the Tulsa game.
In the Tulsa, okay. I thought that was. I thought he had a little
9 for like 27 yards and a touchdown, and this one he had 7 for 20. It feels like we saw him a little bit earlier than we did.
He was like clearly the number 2 in this game.
Yeah.
But like Marcus Major is a guy that they are trusting right now. I mean, he had 19 carries, which I believe was a career high for him. Only had 66 yards, but I think the thing that was most interesting about Marcus Major is he had 66 yards. He had 68 yards after contact. It's like he was getting hit like in the backfield like constantly and just kind of fighting for a few yards at a time, which I think some of that is obviously you need to do a better job of creating some lanes for him. And we've talked about the complications of the run game is kind of multi-layered. It's not just the running backs haven't been able to get loose. It's that the offensive line needs to do a better job of creating those lanes.
Play calling too. I think they're not just running it directly up the middle like they were at the beginning of the year either. They're kind of opening up things more, going to the outside, doing some counters here and there, and that's kind of what we were calling for after what we were seeing. Like it can't just be a single back going up the middle. Like it's not going to work often. I mean, for what you want your run game to be.
Yeah, but I just give some kudos to Marcus Major for the way he fought for some of those yards. And again, I think implementing Dylan Gabriel in the way that they have in the run game is kind of helping out a little bit. Brent Venables said it after the game, like he didn't know what the rushing numbers were off the top of his head in terms of efficiency, but the way they run their offense with RPOs and, having the option to run or pass and kind of call out of those in the moment by making those reads, it kind of skews the numbers and what they look like compared to like what they're actually calling in real time. But obviously the offense is producing, and that's what matters at the end of the day. Like if you're only going to rush for 120, 150 yards a game, but your offense is going to throw for 350 and put up 50, you take that. You're going to need to run in key moments, and I think they still want to keep working on developing that run game and being able to get those yards when they need them. But I mean, it's hard to argue with the results right now. You can nitpick all you want about, hey, this area isn't the best right now, but the offense is putting up numbers, and they just did it against a pretty good defense.
Yeah, just don't have the explosive plays right now in the running game. Those are kind of non-existent at the moment. But we'll see. We'll see how that continues to develop. Like you said, the Dylan Gabriel running aspect has been kind of, the Jackson Arnold package is dead. That's not a thing anymore. Dylan Gabriel is kind of just taking over that, which is fine. We said that from the beginning. That's fine. The Arnold run package has always felt weird. So just let Gabriel do it, and that's been fine so far. And so
he still had a design run in the game, Josh. You saw it, right? He still had a design run. So third down, he had it.
I don't even remember.
He took over on the last drive of the game, and he had a design run.
Oh, that don't matter. That's garbage time. Get out of here.
I know. I'm just saying he still had one. I mean,
get out of here with that.
He's still just running up the middle.
That's just when he took over the offense. But yeah. So overall, though, offensively,
the problem that the fans, the reason they're upset is not because he's, has a package. It's that he's running up the middle, and that's what I'm saying. He still did that. That's what they're nitpicking is he's not. They don't want the second string 5-star quarterback to get hurt doing a play like that. I
don't think it's an injury thing. I think it's dumb. He's not Blake Bell. I don't know why we're running right up the gut over and over and over. That never made any sense. I think that's what most people probably felt. So the fact they've gotten away from that and they've just incorporated more Gabriel run game makes way more sense. And it's working. It's been a nice aspect, especially obviously on Saturday. 40 points in the first half of this game. I mean, they exploded and they kind of reeled things in the second half, worked the clock, things like that. A really good day for the offense overall. One of the better ones that they've had under Jeff Lebby. It was one of Jeff Lebby's best days at OU, and certainly one of Dylan Gabriel's best days at OU. It was good stuff.
Yeah, it felt like they kind of took their foot off the gas there midway through the third quarter. But I pointed this out to James during the game, and felt good about it after the game because Brent Venables mentioned it in his opening remarks. Really, is that Oklahoma absolutely just like obliterated Iowa State in the middle eight of this game, like the final 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. It went from a 30 to 10 or 30 to 20 game, and then Oklahoma gets a field goal, gets an interception, scores a touchdown right before the half, gets the ball back, scores on the opening possession there, and just turns it into a 27-point game. Like Iowa State was done, like with 10 minutes left in the third quarter. That game's over. Mm-hmm. And, Brent Venables talked about it a little bit, the first day of fall camp when we spoke to him, is that, he talked about situational football being more efficient. He really put an emphasis on the middle eight. And I'm going to dig a little bit more into the numbers about how they did there last year and kind of how they're doing this year. But that is exactly what he, kind of envisioned this team being able to do from year one to year two, just in terms of improving situationally and efficiently. And we saw that in real time right there against Iowa State because, after Oklahoma scores, in those first 3 or 4 minutes of the second half, that game was over. They were able to put it in cruise control and just trust their defense to not give up anything else.
Yeah, like I mentioned last week that they've ended all these games on runs. This was the most extreme. It was 21-20. So they ended this game on a 29-0 run, if you want to call it that, over the last 40 minutes or so. That's encouraging. That's something that good teams do, winning teams do.
They did it with so many recruits.
Overall, good day for Oklahoma. Missed another field goal in this game. Maybe a little worrisome moving forward in a big moment. Zach Schmidt had his moments last year where he missed some untimely kicks. Missed one in this game. Doesn't matter when you win by 30, but
I will say
for 36 yards, a chip shot.
Yeah, I will say for Zach Schmidt, when we talked to him before the season, he talked about, kind of just like flushing each kick. Don't let the last one affect the next one. They're all mutually exclusive events. He missed that 36 yarder, comes back out and knocks down a 46 yarder. So at least he didn't let one kick affect him twice, so to speak.
Sure.
So it's good at least to see him bounce back, but you don't want to see him miss a chip shot like that.
Sure.
And that was the only time that Oklahoma did not score in the red zone, was that missed field goal. And it came right after that Brennan Thompson bomb. So, when you get those explosive plays, you want to be able to capitalize and score points. But yeah, a little bit shaky in terms of field goal there, but at least they've still been making, big plays on special teams, even if, the field goal kicking hasn't been the best, because we talked about Peyton Bowen's block punt. He's got 2 of those. Gavin Freeman had the punt return earlier in the season. So they've been able to make things happen in that aspect of the game.
Special teams under Brent Venables has taken a massive, it's a good unit overall. But yeah, he, like you said, great point. He made a couple kicks, made a longer, 46 yarder, I think, after the chip shot miss. Yeah. But yeah, it gives you a little pause. You're going to be sweating out every kick.
A kicker at OU, that's been one of those positions as well that's been like historically good, like overall. There's kickers that come through here and set records and things like that. And that's, it's still tough because OU fans aren't used to that. Like you said, there hasn't been many missed field goals when OU absolutely needs it. You talk about like Gabe Birkin that came through here. He was outstanding. Wait, was he the one with the? Did he have a burrito that he kicked or something?
Yeah,
Josh?
ruined his season pretty much.
Then after that, it was that's. Other than that, he was like one of the best that came through here. It's crazy. Yeah, Tom doesn't know. I don't think he knows about the burrito.
We were coming off a year where Zach Schmidt missed kicks in key spots. The Cheez-It Bowl. They probably win. Then some other games too. Texas Tech. There was moments. So. And he's been fine. Hadn't been an issue yet, but you miss a chippy like that. It was a close game at the time. It gives you a little pause moving forward. But overall, obviously Oklahoma dominates this game. They're 5-0. Texas up next. Like we said, first time since 2011 they've both been undefeated. Texas is number 3 in the AP poll. Oklahoma's number 12. Like we said, college football. This game always has obviously massive national attention. It hosts college games and stuff like that close to every year. But this year especially so. With the start Texas is off to, Oklahoma's 5-0. It's the biggest game in the country by far this weekend. It's going to be mayhem in Dallas.
I think the stat is 2009. I think it's 2009 since they're both undefeated. I think it's 2011 since
2011
they're both 5-0.
No, 2011 they're both undefeated.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, 2009 since they're both 5-0.
Oh, I thought it was 4-0. Okay, well, now I'm confusing everybody. Go ahead.
What you said doesn't even make sense if you thought about it. 2011 they've been undefeated. 2008 or 2009 since they were 5-0. I think maybe 9. I can't remember. But 2011 they've been undefeated. Early thoughts on this game. Obviously Thursday we'll break it down in full. That's when we're getting to the weeds of it. People know that by now. But early thoughts on this game. Do you how big of underdogs is Oklahoma? They're going to be underdogs. I don't think any OU fan would even argue that. But how big of underdogs?
5-point underdogs.
Would ask it.
Yeah, I think the line opened at 5. Texas favored by 5, 5.5, something like that. I think the over-under was like 62.5, 63. So that's kind of like an implied score of 33-28. So these teams are going to score. They've both shown the ability to do that. We saw Texas just absolutely pull away from Kansas. Kansas felt like their offense couldn't even do much, and obviously they were without Jalen Daniels. I think that's a few games now where Texas has not played an opponent's starting quarterback. So we'll see what kind of test Dylan Gabriel can give that Texas defense. I'm really curious to see. I know he's obviously anxious to get in this game after missing the game last year due to injury. Chance to put his mark on this rivalry in his final year. And if you're Oklahoma's offense, you have to feel pretty confident with the way that Dylan Gabriel's been playing this season. Certainly coming off, like you said, probably one of his best games in an Oklahoma uniform. 366 passing yards, over 400 total yards, 5 total touchdowns. First time in his career, he's rushed for 2 touchdowns in a game. He's hitting those deep balls, just playing with some swagger. And that's what you want to see from this offense heading into without a doubt the biggest and toughest game on their schedule. And these guys have a sour taste in their mouth after last year, 49-0. We all know what happened. They have to feel real good coming into this game. But Texas has been playing really well, man. I'm eager to look closer at kind of the numbers and how these teams match up as we get into this week and preview the game in full on Thursday. But it's shaping up to be a big one.
Yeah, definitely. I like where the line is, the 5-point spread there. I mean, if you ask me like the second week of the season, I probably would have had Texas, 2 or 3 touchdown, victor. But now I think as the line stays, it could go either way in this one. I really do think it's that close now.
Is James because of upset?
Do what?
So are you going to pick the upset?
I'm not sure yet. As I said before the season, I said Texas would win the Red River Rivalry, but OU would come back. That was my bold prediction. OU would come back and beat them in the Big 12 championship. I think I'm sticking to that as of right now. But like I said, I want to look at it more and really dive in. But I think I like where that line is. I think it'll be a closer game than even I initially thought it was going to be. Like I've said earlier, like the run game that Texas has, and to be able to use that in these tough games. I mean, just how is OU going to respond to that? That's the thing. How are they going to handle that run game?
Yeah, I will note, according to Pro Football Focus, Oklahoma has the number 2 overall defensive grade in the country through 5 weeks at 92.7. Only Alabama's defense has been better. Obviously, Alabama played Texas, so we saw what happened there. Oklahoma's run defense is the top-rated unit in the country, 92.4. Pass coverage defense, 10th. So Oklahoma's defense has been playing lights out. They've done really well against the run. Obviously gave up a big one this past week against Iowa State. But like James said, this is going to be their toughest test, facing that Texas run game so far. And one other note, I know Steve Sarkisian had his early week press conference earlier today, but tight end Jatavian Sanders is day-to-day right now. He's their 3rd leading receiver, a guy that probably a lot of people think could be a matchup problem for Oklahoma. So just something to monitor as we get further into the week.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously Texas has been tested. I mean, it'd be silly to say otherwise. They went into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama. Even if Alabama's not what they usually are, it's still Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
Nobody goes into Tuscaloosa and beats Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, they're still going to win double-digit games this year. But the elephant in the room for Texas, I think that if you're a Longhorn fan, that you're probably is in the back of your mind a little, is that they haven't really played a good quarterback, period. I mean, they've, Jalen Milroe for Alabama is a freak athlete. I don't know if you call him a good quarterback right now. He got benched and then brought back. They didn't play Jalen Daniels. They didn't play Blake Shapen. Both guys were out in the last 2 weeks in Big 12 play. So Dylan Gabriel's pretty clearly the best guy they played as far as quarterback goes. So that would be the one, if you were going to try to plant a seed of doubt into Texas fans' heads, that would probably be it. That this is the best QB played by pretty wide margin so far this season. So the Longhorns are clearly very good. It'd be silly to say otherwise. They're a top 5 team. Strong argument they should be number 1 in the poll. I mean, quite frankly. I mean, the way they play, they've dominated games. They beat good teams. Georgia has kind of skated by. Georgia's going off reputation at number 1 right now. From what they've done this year, there's no way they should be number 1. So, it's going to be fun. It's going to be mayhem. And, we kind of alluded to it, but I'll say everybody remembers what happened last year. And also there was extenuating circumstances. Oklahoma didn't have a quarterback who could throw the ball last year in that game. They literally had Braden Willis running a Wildcat quarterback for a decent chunk of the game, a tight end. But that doesn't change the fact that on paper, it's 49-0 forever. On the scoreboard that day, it read 49-0. OU players that were on that last year's team remember that. And they've been sitting on that and stewing on that for a full year. Brent Venables had to live with that. That's the only time that's his one game as head coach. He's had to live with that and sit with that for a year. And you got to know that everybody on that team has been dying. Dylan Gabriel had to miss the game. They've all been dying. So motivation and fire and all that should be not at all an issue. It should be, that part of it, the intensity level should be as high as it'll ever get. And so that part of it, OU fans should be excited about. So,
Josh, those points you just made. That's why I'm liking where the line is. I said this on Saturday about the quarterbacks, and the Texas hasn't played the greatest quarterbacks. OU has the top 2 quarterbacks that they're going to play so far this season with Jackson Arnold and Dylan Gabriel. I mean, either one of those guys are going to be the best quarterback that those teams have seen on the field. And we talked about the motivation that OU is going to have. I mean, it's been so many seasons, like the last 10 or so years, that OU has been the team that has had everything going for them going into this game. They've been the ones that are going after their, college football playoff and things like that. And now that it's switched, but there's so much motivation for OU to try to get this done, to try to knock off Texas. I mean, as like I said, when you talk to Jaden Gibson, you can tell they're going to be angry. OU is angry about that. And even as you pointed out, and I never even thought about, Brent Venables, his first, as a head coach at Red River Rivalry, I mean, 49-0, that's embarrassing, man. That's not something you want to keep on. So, like, I think that's really good motivation for OU going forward. Like, I like those points, Josh. I do.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about last week, like, hey, is Iowa State a trap game? Like, is Oklahoma going to be looking ahead to that Texas game? And I think Jaden Gibson kind of put it best. I mean, obviously last week, Oklahoma, they said all the right things, that, hey, we're focused one game at a time. But Jaden Gibson was like, I've been trying not to think about next week for the last 2 weeks. Which means he's obviously been thinking about it to some extent. Like, everybody has this game circled on their calendar. Like, there's no, I think there's no way around that. There's no dancing around it. This is a game that you prepare for throughout the year, throughout the off season. Like, this is what you're in the locker room or in the weight room for. This is what you're doing those hot summer workouts for, is to be able to win a game like this, because a game like this puts you in a position to compete for a national championship. I think I saw the numbers earlier, but I think ESPN's like playoff predictor has, like, the winner of this game has a 70% chance of making the college football playoff this year, while the losers' chances drop to like 30%. So, like, if you want to compete for a championship, this is the game that you're preparing for. This is the make or break game for your season right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's because, I mean, both sides. I mean, you look at their schedules. It's not too challenging either side. I mean, Texas has the Alabama win, but OU was supposed to play Georgia in week 2 instead of SMU, but the SEC announcement kind of changed that up for them. But so it's like, this is the game that you really have to go after, and it should be possibly should have been a top 10 overall matchup if you look at resumes and things like that. But overall, I mean, number 3 versus number 12, this is going to be pretty exciting stuff, and the one that I think a lot of college football fans in the country are going to tune into this one to see where this goes, because this is going to really affect the landscape of college football, this game.
100%. Going to be fun. Decent to good chances. Not the only time we see this game this year, obviously, but we'll worry about that down the road. Oklahoma and Texas on Saturday. Again, Thursday show, we're going to dive fully into this game and do the full game preview. Obviously, also Colin Kennedy will loop in, our lead recruiting analyst, give his thoughts on the game and hit the latest recruiting news for the Sooners as well. So you're not going to miss Thursday's show. Should be a good one. Oklahoma.247sports.com. Tons of post-game reaction coming out of Saturday. If you missed anything, it's all going to be there for you. Also on the YouTube channel. And obviously, it's already begun, but it'll just ramp up more and more as we go throughout the week. Preview and getting ready for this game, Oklahoma and Texas. You're not going to miss what Brent Venables and these players have to say this week. So make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel to get ready for the game this weekend. Sooners and Longhorns. The Red River Shootout is what it used to be called. I kind of stick with that. It's the best name. So we'll ride with that and go into this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun down there in Dallas.
But there's defense played now. The shootout doesn't really make, there's a lot of defense played on these two teams now.
I mean, Vegas is still expecting this score to be, in the 30s, high 20s.
Yeah, we'll get points. We'll get points. The defenses are better, but we're going to get some points this weekend. That's for sure. Going to be great. Very excited. Thursday show, we're back to preview the game in full, hit some recruiting news, other stuff like that. So that's it for now. We'll see you Thursday. For Tom Green, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys then as we get ready for the Red River Shootout. Oklahoma, Texas, can't wait. It is the best week of the year.
See you.